At 37,000 feet, silence fell where sound should have been. Flight 417 sliced through clear night air, engines whispering, cabin lights dimmed to the blue hush of calm trap. Then the stars blinked out, all at once. The hum of the jet collapsed into a vacuum of stillness, so absolute it felt like pressure. Captain Elias Rowe's fingers froze on the throttle, the radio dead, the horizon vanishing into ink. A ripple shivered through the fuselage, not turbulence, but something stranger, like gravity had blinked. First Officer Mia Raines checked her instruments, all zeros, every system reporting nothing. Outside, lightning without storm clouds carved white scars across a soundless void. 12 minutes passed, or maybe none at all. When the radar finally returned, it said they were somewhere that didn't exist. The question no one dared to ask trembled in the air like static. Where had they been? When sound returned, it wasn't the steady hum of engines, but a deep, distant pulse, as though the world itself had restarted. Every passenger looked around, expecting applause, confusion, anything. But what they saw was dawn breaking from the wrong direction. Captain Rowe tried contacting air control. Static answered. Mia's fingers trembled as she recalibrated systems that now claimed they were above a landmass none of them had ever seen. The clouds parted like curtains, revealing something vast and glowing beneath. A shadow moved across the ocean, too still to be waves, too bright to be reflection. The passengers pressed to the windows, breath fogging the glass. No one spoke. Even the plane seemed to hesitate. The cabin lights brightened suddenly, flickering like heartbeats. Some passengers whispered prayers, others filmed, believing it was an aurora or rare atmospheric trick. But Lena Porter felt it, a subtle change in pressure, as though they had dipped beneath something unseen. Dr. Patel stared out the window, lips moving in silent calculation, muttering about refraction and magnetic distortion. His tone betrayed what he feared. This wasn't nature. The air shimmered like heat on asphalt, and then everything steadied again. The passengers exhaled in relief, not knowing they were no longer above any known ocean. At JFK, Jonas Hale watched the blip reappear, but it wasn't where it should be. The coordinates placed Flight 417 over an empty stretch of the South Atlantic, far beyond its range. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it a glitch, but the radar held steady. A second later, a soft voice filled the radio, crackling with static. It was Captain Rowe. "We're here," he said, but nothing looks right. Jonas leaned in, voice tight, asking for position details. The reply came faint and hollow, layered with what sounded like an echo, as if the same words were being spoken twice from two places at once. Captain Rowe adjusted the altitude, but the altimeter numbers rolled backward. Outside, the light shifted, colors bending through violet into silver. "Ground control, confirm our position," he repeated, static. Then, faintly, a second voice echoed his words, his own, delayed, as though the air were replaying time. Mia's breath caught. Below, a coastline shimmered, half-formed, geometric patterns visible in its sands, glowing from beneath. Lena's phone camera turned toward it, recording the impossible. The horizon bent, and the sun rose twice. The plane descended through the glowing haze like falling through a dream that refused to wake. Static streaked across the windows, and the controls responded as if underwater, delayed, sluggish. Captain Elias Rowe's knuckles whitened around the yoke. "Altitude 3,000. Mia murmured, her voice trembling. Yet the ground beneath was wrong. Light without source, land without form. As they pierced the clouds, the landscape revealed itself. A cityscape mirrored on water. Towers suspended upside down in perfect symmetry. No waves, no wind. Only reflection. Passengers pressed to the glass, their eyes wide in silence. Someone whispered that the clouds below looked like glass, not vapor. And then the landing lights flickered, guiding them toward a runway that should not exist. When the wheels touched down, there was no impact, only silence. A smooth slide over something that looked like water but felt like solid ground. The engines whined low, a ghostly hum echoing far beyond the fuselage. As the aircraft slowed, passengers unbuckled, disoriented. Through the windows, lights stretched endlessly. Rows of glowing pylons leading into mist. Captain Rowe glanced at the monitors. All data read. Unknown. He turned to Mia, whose lips barely moved. Our way on Earth. No one answered. The plane came to a full stop, and the mist pressed against the windows like breath. When the doors opened, the air carried no scent. Not salt, not fuel, nothing. It was as if the world had been erased and rewritten. The first step onto the tarmac felt unreal, yet solid. The ground shimmered faintly underfoot, like cooled metal reflecting movement. Lena Porter lifted her phone, recording through trembling hands. The footage showed a horizon that bent upward, meeting itself in a soft curve. Dr. Amir Patel crouched down, touching the surface, then recoiled. His fingers left no reflection. In the distance, faint radio static rose and fell like a heartbeat. The crew and passengers stood together in eerie stillness, surrounded by light that came from nowhere. Jonas Hale replayed the radar logs for the 6th time, refusing to believe what he saw. The data showed Flight 417 vanishing at 12:4 and reappearing exactly 12 minutes later over coordinates that didn't exist on any aviation map. When he zoomed in, the radar screen distorted, the same blip appearing twice, milliseconds apart, one slightly behind the other. He ran diagnostics, checked satellites, even called neighboring control centers, but all reported the same impossible coordinates. Then, the phone rang. A voice, Captain Rose, speaking the same words Jonas had already heard earlier, but this time slightly delayed, with static layering over static. "We've landed," it said. But where are we? On the runway that wasn't a runway, the mist began to thin. The light shifted, revealing faint silhouettes, structures resembling terminals, but wrong. Angles bent in ways eyes couldn't follow. Signs glowed with letters from no known language, symbols rearranging themselves each time someone blinked. Captain Rowe called out for any response on emergency frequency. The radio replied with whispers of their own voices, delayed, overlapping. Lena turned her phone camera toward the structures, zooming in. Through the haze, she caught movement, figures standing perfectly still watching them. Then, the image blurred as if the camera refused to focus. Mia whispered, "Someone's here." The mist parted slowly, unveiling a world that mimicked Earth but not quite. The air shimmered faintly, as though every breath came with light. Captain Elias Rowe led the passengers forward, his boots clicking against a smooth, metallic surface that bent beneath weight like thin glass. The runway stretched toward a skyline both familiar and foreign, buildings suspended midair, their reflections hanging below them like echoes. Lena Porter recorded every step, her voice trembling as she narrated, but when she replayed the footage, the people were gone. Only the plane, the mist, and her own breathing remained. Dr. Amir Patel stood still, his gaze scanning the curvature of the horizon. "This isn't reflection," he murmured. "It's recursion." The world had looped itself, trapping them inside its mirrored design. Mia glanced at Elias. "If this is a map," she whispered, "who drew it?" They found a sign, or something pretending to be one. It stood at the edge of a pathway, carved from glass that pulsed faintly with inner light. The markings rearranged themselves with each glance, translating, then reverting, then shifting again. Elias reached out, fingers almost touching it. But the surface rippled like water, releasing a low harmonic hum that vibrated through the ground. Mia flinched back, hearing her own voice echo from nowhere, whispering, "Turn back." The sound wasn't memory. It was present, layered over time. Amir crouched beside the sign, fascinated and terrified. "This place isn't showing us where to go," he said softly. "It's showing us what we already did." Lena wandered ahead, drawn by the faint sound of dripping water. But there was no source, only the echo of what might have been. She stepped beneath a vast structure resembling a terminal roof, translucent and humming with static. Her phone camera flickered, showing her standing both there and somewhere else, like overlapping ghosts. The others called her name, but their voices fractured, splitting into multiple directions. For a moment, she saw herself turning back to them, and another version walking away. Fear seized her chest. "I think it's recording us," she whispered, her voice doubled. "Not now, before." In the cockpit, the plane systems had restarted themselves. Screens glowed with data streams in a language none of them recognized, and the radio emitted soft voices. Familiar ones. Jonas Hale's transmission echoed through the speakers, but twisted the words, reversed. "We found you," it seemed to say, followed by a whisper in Captain Rowe's own voice asking, "What did we land on?" Elias and Mia stood frozen, listening. Every light flickered in rhythmic pulses matching their heartbeats. The aircraft no longer felt like a machine. It felt alive, waiting. Dr. Patel knelt near the edge of the runway, tracing his fingers along its glowing seams. "This isn't solid," he murmured. "It's coated." Beneath the transparent surface, faint patterns moved, waves of light bending and looping endlessly. When he placed his hand flat, the glow reacted, pulsing outward in a perfect circle. Then the light split, forming symbols that stretched into a perfect ring around him. He looked up at Elias, realization dawning in his voice. "We didn't land on ground," he said. "We landed on a recording." The air hummed again, and the reflections of every person flickered, half a second behind, repeating the same terrified motion. By dawn, if it could be called that, the light above them no longer changed. It pulsed. Every few seconds the world flickered, like film slipping through a projector, too fast. Captain Elias Rowe stood before the nose of Flight 417, watching its reflection lag half a moment behind, the aircraft replaying its own stillness. Mia Raines ran diagnostics that returned the same timestamp again and again. 23:12. Amir Patel began writing equations across a torn flight manual, trying to make sense of what he called a temporal loop. Lena Porter replayed her recordings and saw passengers moving before she had filmed them, smiling seconds in advance, eyes already aware. She whispered, "We're living the playback." Elias turned, his face ghostly in the silver light. "Then who's watching it?" Jonas Hale barely slept. At the control tower, he watched the radar feed looping endlessly. Each time, Flight 417 vanished and returned, with the same 12-minute gap. But tonight, as he stared into the green grid, a second blip appeared, slightly behind the first, repeating every movement like a ghost signal. He leaned forward, sweat forming at his temples. The two planes moved in sync, except one blinked out before the other. Jonas played the feed backward and realized something horrifying. The echo signal was always first. Whatever had vanished wasn't lagging. It was leading. Lena couldn't sleep. Her phone kept unlocking itself, replaying videos she didn't remember taking. In one clip, she was laughing, sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. Behind her, passengers chatted, calm and unaware. The timestamp read 12 minutes before the disappearance. She paused, noticing her own voice whispering something inaudible. Turning up the volume, she heard herself say, "Don't let it land." The screen glitched, the video froze, and for a second her reflection blinked, though she hadn't. She dropped the phone, breath catching in her throat. In that mirrored silence, she realized the recording wasn't from the past. It was from somewhere still coming. Dr. Paddle's calculations spiraled beyond physics. He had mapped out the pattern of their heartbeat, the flicker of lights, even the rhythm of the radio static. Each sequence repeated at precise intervals. "We're part of the recording," he said, pacing the floor. "Not copies, continuations. This world plays what the original left unfinished." Elias listened, his hand resting on the console. "Then, how do we stop it?" he asked. Amir's eyes lifted, haunted. "We don't. Recordings don't stop themselves. They fade. Outside, the mirrored skyline dimmed, as if obeying. Mia stepped outside the aircraft again, drawn by movement in the mist. Figures, dozens of them, stood near the edge of the light. They were shaped like people but hollow, translucent, repeating gestures like rehearsed actions. One raised an arm, and Mia realized with dread that it mimicked her own. She took a step back, and every figure mirrored her motion, half a second late. Elias joined her, watching as the reflections became clearer. They were themselves, frozen in infinite replay. "How do you escape a place built from memory?" Mia asked. Elias stared into his own reflection, voice breaking. "By forgetting how you got here." Back at JFK, Jonas Hale sat before an empty screen. The radar feed had finally gone dark, as if the sky itself refused to remember. Yet his headset still carried faint static, like breathing between words. He played back the tower logs and froze when he heard his own voice answering a distress call that had never come through. "Flight 417, you're clear for approach," the recording said, his tone calm, ordinary. But he had never spoken those words. Then came another voice layered beneath his, Captain Rowe, echoing faintly, whispering, "We didn't land." Jonas' hands trembled. He looked up at the radar console where both recordings overlapped, the signals blending into one perfect frequency. It sounded less like communication and more like confession. In the ghostly world beneath the silver horizon, Captain Elias Rowe gathered everyone inside the cabin once more. He played back the black box audio, but it wasn't recording them now. It was playing what they hadn't yet done. His own voice filled the cockpit. "We must go back through the same path." Mia covered her mouth. The sound of her laughter echoed faintly from the speaker. "Not now, but soon, Doctor." Patel stared at the waveform on the screen. It pulsed in sync with their heartbeats. "It's predicting us," he said quietly. "We're trapped in the moment before choice." Outside, the world flickered again and their reflections smiled without them. Lena scrolled through her phone gallery, watching footage appear that she hadn't taken. Each clip was perfect, framed, focused, color balanced, but she wasn't behind the lens. In one, Elias stood before the mirror skyline, whispering something she couldn't make out. In another, Mia smiled faintly, saying, "If we go back, we erase it all." The timestamp on every video read the same, 12 minutes apart. Lena's breath quickened as she realized these weren't memories. They were blueprints, each one marking what they were about to do. The last clip showed her face, whispering to the camera. It wasn't the flight that vanished. It was the world. Jonas Hale stared at the report he had written hours ago, or maybe weeks. The timestamps blurred together. No confirmed crash, no confirmed landing. He typed the sentence again and again, each time the cursor deleting itself halfway through. The tower lights flickered, the air around him heavy with static. Then the sound returned. Not through his headset, but from the open radio frequency. "We're sorry," Elias's voice said. "We thought we could fix it." Jonas froze, realizing the signal wasn't coming from the sky but from the building itself, bouncing between frequencies. Trying to return home, Elias stood at the front of the cabin, eyes fixed on the pulsing horizon. "We were never meant to land here," he said. The others listened, silent, watching the light outside bend like liquid. "Whatever this is, it's waiting for us to decide." Dr. Patel nodded slowly. "If we stay, the recording loops forever. If we fly through again, maybe we end it. Or vanish completely." Mia met Elias's gaze, voice steady despite the fear. "Then we take it." Lena lifted her phone one last time, her reflection already showing the takeoff before it began. The engines roared to life, echoing through both skies at once. The hum of the engines rose like a heartbeat, syncing with the strange pulse of the world around them. Flight 417 taxied toward the shimmering horizon, where sky and reflection met in one endless mirror. Captain Elias Rowe adjusted the throttles, the controls trembling as if resisting. "If we go through, everything resets," Dr. Patel said, gripping the armrest. Mia Raines locked eyes with him. "Or we stop being copies," she whispered. Lena's phone camera recorded the moment, the reflection on its screen already showing takeoff seconds before they moved. Elias exhaled slowly. "If anyone wants to stay, this is the time." No one spoke. The air outside shimmered like heat on glass. Then as one, they lifted from the ground, into themselves. The ascent felt wrong. Clouds didn't move past them. They bent around, spiraling in luminous arcs. The altimeter spun endlessly, numbers flipping backward and forward. Maya's voice cracked through the static. "We are not climbing. We're falling upward." Elias gritted his teeth, wrestling the yoke as the controls pulsed with their own rhythm. The view beyond the cockpit shimmered, a tunnel of light folding in on itself. Lena's camera struggled to focus, capturing overlapping frames of the same moment. Dr. Patel closed his eyes. "Time's looping in the climb," he said softly. "We have to break it before it seals." Jonas Hale's radar exploded into life again. Two identical signals appeared, one rising, one descending. He leaned forward, confusion turning to terror. "They're flying through themselves," he whispered. The signals merged, overlapped, then vanished. He shouted for confirmation from nearby towers, but the channels crackled only with static. Then, faintly, a voice, "Jonas, can you hear me?" It was Elias, but the transmission timestamp read 12 minutes ahead. The room fell silent. Jonas pressed record, his voice shaking. "If you can hear this, what happens when both flights arrive?" Inside the vortex, time unraveled. The passengers felt weightless, bodies flickering between stillness and motion. Lena watched her phone display their ascent in reverse. "Dr. Patel shouted above the rising hum, "It's collapsing in sync with us. Keep the throttle steady." Mia's voice broke as she read the altitude. "We're above ourselves." Elias tightened his grip, vision blurring as the horizon split in two, one golden, one blue. Between them, an outline appeared, another Flight 417, emerging from the light. "That's us," Mia whispered, tears streaking her cheeks. The first version. Elias stared at the identical aircraft, its cockpit dark. "Then we end it now," he said, and pushed the throttle forward. The two planes converged in silence. No collision, no impact, just a blinding pulse that erased every line of separation. The world folded, rewound, and released. In the cockpit, instruments reset to normal, skies clear, and the ocean stretched blue beneath them. Mia blinked hard, staring at her gauges. 7:24 a.m. Coordinates matching the exact point before disappearance. Elias exhaled, trembling. "We're back," he whispered. Lena's phone vibrated in her lap. A new video notification appearing with no sender. The thumbnail showed the same view outside, but from above, as if someone else was watching them land. The passengers cheered softly when the intercom clicked on again. That warm, familiar voice of Captain Elias rose steady and calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've regained contact. We'll be landing shortly." Relief rippled through the cabin, laughter mixing with tears. Outside, the Atlantic gleamed beneath morning sun, waves rolling in perfect rhythm. Yet the radio crackled faintly, and a second voice overlapped his. The same words, spoken half a breath earlier. Mia froze, her hand hovering above the switch. "Elias," she whispered. "It's repeating." He nodded without looking away from the horizon. Maybe it's just echo. But deep down, both knew echoes never came before the sound. At JFK, Jonas Hale's screen lit up with a single radar return. Flight 417, inbound. Transponder clear. "Impossible," he muttered. The data showed normal altitude, normal speed, everything perfect. Then a chill crawled down his neck as another identical return blinked just behind it. 12 minutes apart. He radioed in the first call. "Flight 417, you're cleared for approach." Static filled the channel, followed by his own voice, already saying it. He looked at the timestamp. It was marked 12 minutes ahead. For the first time in his career, Jonas shut the transmission off. He couldn't bear to hear what came next. Lena leaned close to the window, her phone still recording as the coastline came into view. "We made it back," she whispered, smiling faintly. But through her phone screen, the image showed something else. The same shoreline, but empty. No airport, no buildings, only ocean. She blinked, looked up, then back again. Two worlds layered on top of each other, each fading into the other's light. Her reflection in the glass whispered without sound, "You're still there." The video ended itself. For the first time, Lena stopped filming. Outside, the runway approached, but it shimmered, mirage-like, refusing to stay real. Dr. Patel stared at his watch, still frozen at 23:12:4. The others celebrated, unaware that time had not resumed. "Captain," he said quietly, "we didn't move forward." Elias frowned, glancing down. Every gauge in front of him read the same second. The sky, though bright, held the moon faintly visible. Two of them, one pale, one inverted. "Maybe that's the reflection," Mia whispered. Though her voice cracked, the plane descended smoothly, but the clouds below shimmered like glass. Patel closed his eyes. "It's not reflection," he said. "It's recursion again. We never left." The landing was perfect. Smooth, silent, weightless. The passengers applauded, relief washing through the cabin like sunlight. But as the plane slowed, the view outside remained still, the runway unmoving beneath them, frozen mid-frame. Elias tried to brake again, but the controls resisted. The engines hummed in flawless rhythm, no vibration, no motion. Then the cabin lights flickered, and a faint voice filled the intercom. Lena's, whispering from nowhere. "We made it back!" The passengers turned toward her seat, empty. Her phone lay on the cushion, screen glowing with a live video feed. It showed the plane, in flight 12 minutes ago.